This is the Fan-Made Film Podcast.
Hello everybody, it's Rachel here. I am your host of the Fan-Made Film Podcast, which is where you have found yourself, so thanks very much for tuning in. I've got a super exciting episode, she says about every episode, but this one is really great because it was kind of the inspiration behind the whole idea of the Fan-Made Film Podcast. So at the beginning of the year, I did a bit of a producer's course module at Raindance Film School, and I happened to meet Neil Mulholland, who is a drone camera operator. He works at Netflix as well, but he was a drone camera operator for Star Wars Origins. And so when I met him, Star Wars fans seem to have a bit of a sixth sense for when there's another fan around. So maybe it was the Force that brought us together. But so we got to chatting at this course. He saw my Star Wars tattoo. He told me about this fan film, Star Wars Origins. And I was like, stop right there. I watched it 3 days ago. It was amazing. I want to know everything about it. And obviously, lots of fun conversations ensued. And then a couple of months later, the whole lockdown thing happened. And I had a lot of time on my hands to start working on the podcast. And Origins was really my, I have to get this interview. I have to talk to as many people who made this film as possible, because it is outstanding. I mean, you watch it and we talk in the podcast about how incredible the quality is of this film in terms of every aspect, every department's work on it. That the director Phil Hawkins was slightly worried that it was too good, that it might be the one that actually got the bad kind of attention from the likes of Disney and Lucasfilm and sort of put a stop to fan films, which would be an unbelievable shame. So please go and watch Star Wars Origins before listening to this episode if you haven't seen it. I don't think there are any spoilers in it, but it's always nice to experience something fresh first and then learn about it afterwards. So do go and do that. That's my recommendation anyway. So in the podcast, I talk to Phil Hawkins, who is the director, producer and the writer of Star Wars Origins, Marie Everett, who played Ellie, and Ben Haworth, who was the VFX wizard. And Neil as well joins us and talks about some of the incredible drone shots they got that revealed amazing special effects. So there's really great special effects conversations in there as well. And lots of tips and advice and insight from everybody about their various areas of work on the film. And I think that we will probably have a reunion at some point where I catch up with everybody and see what they're working on, which would be absolutely lovely as well. So from my dreary Brighton flat, it's very gross and horrible outside, I'm actually feeling really, really awesome today as I get to share this with you, because I've just spent the last 2 days editing and re-listening to it all, and it's made me really happy to revisit it all. Everyone is so kind in giving up their time to talk to me, and I'm just very, very excited to share this film and these conversations with you as well. So go and type in Star Wars Origins into YouTube. You can check out the Season 1 playlist for the Fan-Made Film Podcast. It's on there as well. And I think you can find it on Twitter and Instagram. And Phil has actually done some amazing behind the scenes and pre-production videos that are actually really packed with loads of information about the making of Star Wars Origins as well. So there's so much out there and it's all amazing. So without further ado, enjoy this episode, and as ever, may the Force be with you.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. What a background you've
Well, I
got.
was just about to say the same about your background. Hang on, here we go.
I've just shoved all of my nerdy paraphernalia in the background.
That's cool. The solid purpley pink wall. I like it. We've not actually done a whole, because I've done podcasts myself, but we haven't actually done a whole discussion, with everybody. Yeah, so I thought it might be interesting to have like an actor, part of the crew, because Neil, yes, was the drone pilot. Basically, did so much stuff.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That is a beard. I thought I had a beard, but man. And then Ben obviously doing all the visual effects. And of course, Marie just looks glamorous and amazing and straight away just doesn't need a background.
Yeah.
Doesn't need cool things
Cool face.
behind her, doesn't need a spirit level. Awesome. Marie, where's your beard?
Hasn't quite grown yet, although my roots are not good. I need a hairdresser's. That's amazing.
This is. I'm going to take a photo of this. One sec. It's Instagram. Before, unless you're one of those podcasts where you've actually already started, and this is just us rambling on for 20 minutes. Everybody, smile for Instagram.
Fandom initiated.
Thanks very much for coming on the podcast, everyone. I'm super excited.
No, thanks for having us. I think it's a really cool idea for a podcast, and I'm excited for the other guests you've got lined up because some of those guys, you know, I watch their fan films, sort of prepping for hours. So it's going to be really interesting to hear you talk to them.
I'm going to try and branch out from Star Wars as well. Try and speak.
There are some. Some. You know, there's obviously Kate Madison of Born of Hope, and there's some Harry Potter fan films.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a really cool idea for a podcast. Kind of unique because, you know, everyone's got a podcast these days, and it's quite nice to go, oh, it's niche but works. So
yeah, well, hopefully, fingers crossed. It's not that long ago you filmed. Was it last year production?
Yeah, it's about this. Well, coming up to this time last year, I think I was definitely in the thick of it.
It's crazy.
When you're crazy when you think about it, because you seem to have blinked, and you know we're almost a year later. But I mean, obviously, it's only been 5 months. You know, since who knows what time it is these days. It's only been 5 months since the actual launch, and you know, for me and Marie, it's been 3 years.
Yeah.
So have you guys known each other, Marie and Phil, for a while, or did you meet through casting processes?
I mean, we met in the casting, so so we've known each other that long because that's how long it took Phil to make it. It was delayed a couple of times. But it was weird. When I went into the casting, I definitely felt like, I think Phil put quite a lot of focus on getting to know you in the meeting, and we chatted a lot, and it was not kind of your average in out thing. I think he asked me like, do you have any questions? I was like, no, I just want to do it. He was like, I'm going to stop you there. He was like, if we're going to spend a lot of time in a car together in Morocco, we should probably kind of like talk a bit. And then we ended up chatting, and then I basically just felt like I'd known him for ages. I think I was kind of weirdly relaxed in that audition.
It was important to not just blanket and see hundreds of different people, because you could have done, you know. So the casting director Martin Gibbons and I, we really pared down the people we wanted to actually see. So I watched as much work as I could of, you know, what people already had. I only saw X amount of people, so we could sit down and have that conversation as people, and just understand, because it's, you know, doing a project like this is so crazy as an idea, and to go out to the desert, and the actual desert, you know, people say, oh, I've been to the desert. It's like, no, this was the desert. And it was important for me to get to know people. And, you know, I'd already done that with the crew. Like, I wouldn't ever, you know, like Neil and I had shot something, you know, only ever shoot in different countries, you know, don't shoot in our own country. But we worked together. Obviously, my DP I worked with for years. Everyone I'd worked with for a very long time. So the actors had to be really part of that family, you know, because it was just getting stuck in to get it done.
How long did the shoot take?
You know, I should have refreshed my memory on statistics, shouldn't I? Was it 8 days or 6 days? 8 days.
Like 6 months or something. Do you know what? It's a shame, because in a way it was over in a blink. But looking back, it was like a whole lifetime. It was like one of those mad experiences that you just, you know, it just seemed to go on forever. So much going on.
Yeah.
But it was just the best thing ever, man. Really, even though it was really, really harsh, you know, the conditions, it's still definitely up there, man. It's one of the best things I've ever been involved in. So even though there were some near-death experiences, but you know.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think we all suffered in different ways, and you know, it was funny because I've been, you know, thinking about the film for 3 years, and I previs the entire thing, like every frame. So even the dialogue stuff, partly because I was waiting to shoot it, so I was just obsessed with it and trying to get it right. So I previewed everything. So when I got the first scene we shot was the scene with Seth and Akbar in the camp, and that dialogue, that conversation. And obviously it was great to have the actors say the lines, and that's always amazing, to know, like, you're on set, everyone's in costume, there's these guys in beautiful Moroccan dress with the blue Berber dress with machine guns on the, it's everything you imagine. But then obviously the performances are great and I was enjoying that, but then the rest of it I was like, oh God, I feel a bit underwhelmed, because I feel like I've sort of shot this already, because I've thought about it so much, and I was like, is this what it's all going to be like? I read like the end of that day, I was like, whoa, what have I done here? Am I not going to be able to enjoy, the experience? And my God, was I wrong? Like, that was the only few hours that actually went to plan, and then the desert set in, and then the illness set in, and then the heat set in, and then big film productions tried to elbow in our locations when we were to shoot, tried to get in. So there's all this stuff going on that now I laugh at, because I'm like, how dare I think it was going to be easy? I mean, Marie can, talk about this, but there are times when you'd wake up at breakfast and be like, right, these guys aren't there, the producers are sick. Right, okay, what can we film? Like, what, this, and it wasn't a schedule there. We go, okay, we just sit and wait. We didn't have the budget to go, okay, everyone recovers, then we shoot, next week. That just wasn't going to happen. So you really had to use every ounce of like filmmaking kind of experience to kind of get it done. And, Marie, for example, is in pretty much every frame, of the film. And doing all her own driving in that Jeep and all this stuff, and so you're like, oh, if Marie's sick, what do we shoot? And then Marie was ill, and the trooper she was, she's like, I'm fine, I can do it, I'll get there. I was like, look, I'd rather have a few hours of you at your absolute best than 2 days of you feeling rotten, because the performance is everything. The performance is what people see. Yeah, we've got lightsabers and we've got a big ship and we're in the desert, it all looks pretty, but you know what, if the performances aren't there, then we're just another fan film, we're just another thing. I remember like I actually sent a lot of people like home to the hotel at different stages, say no, rest and then you'll be better. So there's certain scenes that isn't Marie. It's sometimes there's a bloke in it, like our first AD was Marie at one point. There's nothing like her. So you have to use every trick in the book. So all this prevising, you go like, well, I've thought about this scene so much, I actually know how I can kind of shoot parts of it and then construct it together to get it done.
Yeah, you just don't even know that someone's standing in for you, Marie.
Thank God.
I've watched it a lot, and yeah, that's amazing.
So Marie, is there anything you want to add to that? Because obviously it must have been quite frustrating to.
Yeah, it was one of the. I always talk about the shoot, and like I kind of talk about like with my husband, and I talk about how insanely amazing it was. He's like, I'm pretty sure I remember you being in tears on the phone to me, and I just remember calling him and being so gutted, because it had been. Well, I've been waiting to do this for 3 years. And I mean, the amount of times Phil had asked me, it's like, are you okay with the heat? And obviously I was like, I want the job. I was like, yeah. Having absolutely no idea if I would be okay in this heat.
I've never been in 50-degree heat. I've shot in some pretty hot places. But I've never, ever been in a situation like that where you're driving in a desert, in that, like, and you're trying to just keep people alive. No,
and I was so frustrated and just wanted to work, and I don't think I've ever up until Star Wars Origins I've never missed a day's work because of sickness, and I've been really sick on some sets, like really sick. And you just keep going, but I'm so glad that Phil made that decision, because I know that last day on set for me, and we shot like a lot of the big emotional scenes, I don't think I could have done it. I don't think I would have done it anywhere near as well. And I needed him to be like, no. But it was really difficult. And I remember just feeling like I felt like guilty and frustrated, and you just want to be there, and you know this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. No one else is ever, I'm never going to go to the desert and play with a lightsaber again. And that bit was probably like the hardest for me. But then going back onto set the next day, feeling amazing, knowing that we were gonna kind of just have to get it all, kind of gave me like the biggest buzz ever. And I think that was probably the most enjoyable day on a film set I've ever had. So I'm glad that for me it was worth it. But I mean, lying in bed knowing that Phil is having to somehow shoot a film that you're in every scene, and I was only there for like, I can't remember how many days I was there.
Because you arrived later, because basically, and that was the problem. We'd shot everything we possibly could without you. So because Jamie arrived, and you know, there's scenes with Jamie in the caves, and that's the only scenes that you're not in. And the caves were so far away from the hotel. Like these caves were old kind of underground irrigation systems under the desert, like amazing location. And Neil expertly could probably tell a story about trying to light that cave.
Oh my God. Falling down the hole into the cave.
Yeah. So it was so that's so there was no get out for Marie. There was no all the scenes she wasn't in have been shot. So it was a pretty intense thing to get you there and do it. But you learn. I've never shot in the desert in that way before, so
Marie, you're basically on the move the entire film. There's not really a part where you're sort of sat down carefully having a long dialogue with someone. You're like, because the film starts right in the action, and then you have a car chase and you're running and watching the Star Destroyer and
and there's so much you just don't really think about until you get there, and suddenly you're like, oh, I'm in all these scenes and I'm stood in the sun and I don't have a hat and I'm wearing a pregnancy belly, and suddenly all these things start adding up, and it doesn't matter how much you drink, you're like, I literally can't kind of replace the sweat, it feels like. And every time you drive a car, you got to drive it back. And I wasn't the best at driving the car. Like, I mean,
great, Marie.
I really got into it, but it was there were many times where I would just stop the car and be like, I can't get it into neutral. I just like someone can help me. I can't do it. And
but in your defense, it was an old, World War II like Jeep. So we had to have a mechanic there, and it broke down. It just overheated. So I had to have a mechanic there from the army just fixing it all the time. I mean, there's a spoof version of Origins where you basically just like drive away and the car breaks down and you can't start it again. And
I just stall it and that's it.
See, that's the most movie tropey part of the film, right? Is when you break down and you can't start it again. And everyone's like, well, that's convenient. You're like, no, that happened. I mean, Neil, maybe you can talk about one of my favorite shots, in the film, which, combines Marie's brilliant driving, which happens to be the very first time he drove the car, and that shot, which is the shot that reveals the temple, which is, a big drone shot.
I mean, I probably haven't admitted it until now. And obviously there's a lot of skill that goes into doing that job, but the timing of that shot, the way we sort of were able to track behind the trucks and then swing out wide to get them from the side, and then push in as Marie drives the Jeep up and over the crest of the hill to reveal the Star Destroyer or the temple in the sand. And the point where it crosses the sort of the threshold or the peak of the hill and crosses the car, there's a lot of luck, if I'm honest. And I've never, I think at the time, my memory of sitting under a little easy up tent with Phil and a couple other guys getting some behind the scenes stuff, and Odin, who's the camera operator on the drone, serious concentration. And as that shot was coming off and it looked like it was going to happen, I could hear Phil really, Phil going, oh my God, yes, 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 as it sort of crests the peak of the hill, and we were like, oh man, and when we sort of cut that shot, I was just like, whew, you can't, I mean, we probably tried to get a few shots of it, but we couldn't keep resetting army people transporters and the Jeep that kept breaking down, and so we had to try and get that as quickly as we could, and a lot of luck basically that we got the one that we got that was used in the film. So with the heat and stuff, and the drone was actually melting. It was that hot. It's crazy, man. It really was. It was just a mad experience, and I think you do need a little bit of luck sometimes to get those amazing shots.
Did you have to make kind of creative decisions based on budget, location, and time, kind of on the fly?
Yeah, I mean, I was rewriting the schedule every night. You'd shoot in that heat and just be exhausted, and because I knew the schedule so intimately, well, that it sort of fell on me. And also my production team were sick, so it fell on me to go, right, well, what do we do the next day? And then you're rescheduling, reshot listing, and then you're suddenly like, okay, time to go again. Yeah, but it comes down to money. I mean, you watch the film, and and it is probably the most expensive Star Wars fan film ever made, but it's still like the catering budget of Rogue One for a week. It's like, it's not, we didn't have millions and millions of dollars to make this film. So there are practicalities and compromise that have to come in terms of how you shoot it, and that comes into like amount of shooting days, how long you can have the trucks, how long you can afford the army, how they can afford the tanks for. All these have a value. And our on-ground staff, it wasn't just us here now there. We had our own like army of local Moroccan crew who were keeping us going and backing and supporting the production. We're in the desert. We have to build a base camp. We have to build a place to make food. We have to build places for shelter, and this is like a circus that has to drive around with us to get to these places. So it wasn't just like, and actually at one point I did plan to go, there's the hotel. Actually, there's some dunes there. Can we just like point the camera that way? And my one time we're going to do that was when I think partway through production, when I realized that everyone needed a break. Even I needed a break, and we're supposed to shoot that afternoon. And the problem with the heat is it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. It doesn't just like calm down in the afternoon. So you kind of rest, and then you're like, oh, I've got to get back out in that thing. And I just called it quits on that day, and we lost half their shooting. And that was when we're going to do the scene with Marie at the Jeep on the radio, because that was it was close up. You could kind of dress that anywhere. You could kind of put that anywhere. So my one, like, look, guys, the hotel's there. There's a pool there. You can jump straight in. Didn't happen. But I think the film, for me, was made without compromise in terms of the vision of it. Like, yes, there were challenges, but I don't think they hurt the film. If anything, they made it better. It really forced you to focus on what was important. And I'm not a coverage director anyway. I don't like to just go, okay, let's get this, and just in case, let's get this. That's why we can spend time doing like the opening shot, for example, that, follows someone down and goes down the hill, and then becomes the drone shot, goes up. Because like, I don't need to shoot any close-ups or coverage because I know exactly that's how it's going to be. So you can actually spend more time shooting what's necessary, as opposed to just scattergunning it. Even when it came to the car chases and all that stuff, it really had to be, what do I need to further the story and further the kind of action beat? The same way Spielberg, I'm like Spielberg's discarded fingernail cutting in terms of talent of the shooting these things, but like, the way he does it is like every shot leads to another beat. Like he plans his action sequences like he does a dialogue scene, and that's why they're so thrilling. Every beat escalates, and it's not just a Transformers, for example, where it's like, let's get 20 cameras and just shoot this thing and like click together, and I'm more of the let's think about what we want to shoot versus get everything.
The opening shot of Hadrian Howard's character is one of my favorite shots. The way it just moves, it feels very, very kind of Spielbergian, and it takes you're outside and then you follow this character and it brings you into the story. It's a really, really great shot, and he has a very like Darth Maul sense of kind of presence about him. I thought he was just super cool. Was that kind of intended? Because you had kind of two sets of completely different source materials with Star Wars and Indiana Jones, did you find yourselves in all of your roles drawing on one of them more than the others, using the source material for building characters, for example?
Go on, Marie, did you?
No.
I love it.
I did.
Because my answer is yes, but go on.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think, firstly, I'm probably the least versed in Indiana Jones or Star Wars out of probably everyone. I feel like everyone on the entire crew knew more about it than I did. I kind of, I mean, I've watched Star Wars and I've watched Indiana Jones, but I mean, like, as in, I don't know the world so well, and I don't know everything kind of about it. But equally, because my character was discovering everything, I also didn't want to almost pull too much on understanding, especially particularly the Star Wars kind of element of it. Like when I was researching, I focused more on like watching Indiana Jones films, because it felt like that was more her world that she knew. And I mean, it was pretty helpful when Phil passes you a prop on set and he's like, so just pretend you don't know what this is and it means nothing to you, and just throw it behind you. And I'm like, great, that's it will be pretty easy. But it was definitely easy to get the vibe and to get the sense of the film. I just basically took every cue from Phil, and he kind of always painted the world for me, and he painted it in the script. And I think that it's really interesting the way that, like, I approached the script completely just like as a normal script. Like, I did all my character work the same. I didn't really think about the fact that it was a kind of a fan film, and it was just this story that I was presented on the page, and the world and imagination that created in my head. And I mean, I remember learning lines with, and my husband just being like, do you know what that is, right? Like, you know that you're saying this line from this film and that this has this huge meaning, and that I was like, no. But it didn't change how I would have said the line, because there's not a single line in that script that I believe Phil put in there just because. There's all these amazing like quotes and things that are in there, but they all made perfect sense to me as someone who doesn't know all of those things, just as a story and as a character, which I think why it works and why so many people find it quite an emotional script sometimes.
You know, if you say to someone, say, you know, any line from Star Wars, all you can think about is like, oh, how Vader did it, or even the intonation, the pace, everything. So actually, the fact that you didn't obsess about those lines gave it a freshness that I needed, because I obviously I came out from a complete opposite perspective, because I'm making a fan film as a fan of both, you know, franchises, both worlds. And, you know, so the opening shot, for example, totally by design, it was supposed to tilt down like a Star Wars movie. It's supposed to reveal the desert. Oh, are we in Jakku? Is this Tatooine? Where are we? Oh, there's a hooded figure from behind in black. Oh, he's a Sith. And then suddenly he turns around and starts walking down a hill, and then there's trucks and people with machine guns, and then there's a tent. And then you like, and we either lose people straight away, and then they go on the YouTube comments and like, well, are the trucks in Star Wars? You go like, ugh. Or, you know, people go, wait, hang on, what? Like, I'm in, you know, and that was to draw you into it. And Ben had to do some, not much, but a bit of fiddling on that shot at the start to make it work, because actually 2 different cameras to make that work, wasn't it, Ben?
It was, and it was also a horrible shot to track and put dunes in. Thanks, Phil.
No, you're welcome. I mean, you know, you're probably like maybe sighing now, still at the pain, but I was saying like before about not shooting coverage and making the shots long and live, and so you can see them. I mean, from a visual effects perspective, like that's like the longer the shot is, the more time you got to look at it, and the less tricks you can use, right? So it's like a nightmare. And not only that, I only gave you 5 minutes to do it. So
yeah, that's true. It's a funny one, that, because it's a double-edged sword, really, because actually we like long shots so that we're not trying to cram a load of stuff into it, and so you can see stuff. But then there's a payoff, as you say, of it takes forever, and then you have shots that are really close to a person tracking around them, don't you, Phil?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You can't see them all, and you have to completely recreate. They're particularly hard. But no, I quite like long shots, and I like it when you haven't got all the coverage because you know what you're dealing with.
Because for me, one of the very, very first visual effects shots I saw was that drone shot that went over Marie driving and then went over the hill and then revealed the temple, in the background. And like we talked about it, I'd seen some renders. Like we're trying to figure out how much you hide the Star Destroyer, so it doesn't give it away, but without cheating what you're looking at. So when you go back to it, you go, oh yeah, okay, that is the trash chute from Empire Strikes Back. Okay, I see what they've done there. And I saw it when I saw it rendered for the first time with all that tracked in and all the detail. I mean, if you see the shot and look at the end, I just love the way there's like the sand where it comes and joins the ground where, Marie's driving over, which is rocky. You got this beautiful little curve as if wind has like blown it, it's feathered in. And, you see it for like a second. But like if you go frame by frame in 4K, you go, oh my God, that's amazing. That is like ILM level stuff in this little film we're all making, and that like it's one of my favorite shots because it kind of combines everything that we're talking about in terms of style and pace and excitement, and it worked. Thank God.
When you were talking about how the script and people's influences, having looked back at the experiences of both of those worlds and how that drove people on set, including the guys in front of the camera, but even just from the drone stuff. And I think this is one of the things that I really appreciate about Phil and his style of filmmaking is that the drone stuff drones are on everything that you can see now, and quite often it's really totally unnecessary. So the way Phil was directing the drone was really in sort of tune with the way me and Odin as sort of film fans and sort of filmmakers think, because it was about, let's not use this as a little gimmicky toy, let's just use it in the same way that we would have experienced it if we watched, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Big, lovely, wide, sort of desert landscape shots that give you a real feel, very, very cinematic sort of drone use. And I've worked on lots of stuff, small indie stuff to really, really big studio production stuff. And I've seen the way that filmmakers and directors operate in it. And quite often they fall into that trap where they've got this stuff and they just want to use it instead of actually thinking, well, will this actually tell the story? Is there any point to this at all? So some of those big wide shots with the drone and the tracking shots and stuff, in my head while we were shooting those, it was like, would this look out of place in an Indiana Jones film or even like a Star Wars film these days, which would have probably been a helicopter shot. And then obviously we were always thinking about the length of the shot, because we were thinking about Ben and his team and how they were going to get to use that shot. And it was tough concentrating in that heat and keeping it all nicely framed and stuff, but we were always thinking this needs to look like one of those types of shots, and that was the direction from Phil as well. No gimmicky drone stuff, we don't like that.
Yeah, because I guess the camera, it's there to, like you said, tell a story. So if you're flying around doing all of these crazy shots, cramming it into a sequence in a film, it kind of takes you out of what's happening. You become aware that you're watching a film, and that's not really, I guess, what you should feel as a viewer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's like people like are impressed for a few minutes, right? So and this is no disrespect to a few fan films out there, because I'm obviously a big fan fan. I've watched them all, but I feel like when you have a lightsaber fight that goes on for 20 minutes, you go like, I mean, it's cool for 5, if that. But you go like, where's the story? Why do I care about these people? Why am I watching what? And YouTube is. I mean, everyone does it. I do it. You see that progress bar, and you're like, oh God, I've got something else to look at. And you're constantly trying to keep people's attention. And it's even harder on YouTube, especially with our film, because actually it's a big risk not to just scattergun. To open the film with one shot that takes. And Ben, correct me, you probably know the frame, but like it's like 2 minutes. I don't know how. Yeah, it's a long shot, especially the YouTube audience, you know. And we don't start with a big fight. We don't start, and it's all about building. And I feel that by design, the film rewards you for sticking with it, because the biggest and the most impressive stuff is at the very, very, very end. But you've got to earn that stuff, right? You've got to care. There's no point starting with that, you know. And we even hid it from trailers. We hid it. We don't want anyone to see it because we want people to watch it and go, "Where is this film? Are they tanks? Like what? Where is this film going?"
Jaws, I guess, is a really good example of that as well. Like you don't see the shark for a really, really long time into that film, and then all of the crazy stuff happens at the end with the mechanical shark. And
I like that actually. I don't know. I did ask Phil this if it was deliberate or not, and he didn't really answer me. But
if it's clever, yes,
it is actually really clever. And I think you were like, yeah, I did mean that. But, you know, obviously you've come to this because you've seen that it's called Star Wars Origins. But if you watch it, it's not completely certain that it is what it is until, you know, there's all these little lovely Easter eggs and stuff. But there's also like, you know, was there foreshadowing in it? There's a shot of Jamie down in the caves with this amazing beam of light shining down into the cave, and that was kind of just a bit of a chance thing that came up when we had a big mirror in the back of one of the trucks, and we angled the sun onto the mirror to shine it down this hole. Which the fact that this hole in the desert went down into a big cave, it basically looked like a Sarlacc pit. And I was standing at the top, holding this mirror, and the sun was moving, and we had to keep re-angling the mirror. And at one point, I almost fell into it, and like every atom in my body tried to balance myself back to stop me going down this hole. But the fact that beam of light shines down straight into that cave, and there's some sounds. Phil will probably talk about the sounds that are sort of planted through the movie as well that sort of suggest Star Wars. I was like, Phil, did you mean that to be sort of foreshadowing the lightsaber moment? And he's like, Phil, where did you? I mean, you could maybe answer that now.
Not at all. Like when we had an amazing poster, a guy called Travis English did as a poster and combined the beam with the lightsaber. I was like, yeah, that's pretty smart. I'll just say I came up with that. No, because actually I was like hating my direct photography at the time because it was him. The beam makes that, right? The beam totally makes that. And also, unless you built that set, you know, and it cost an absolute fortune, there's no way you could light that. So the fact that there was this hole and the sun, you know, and my DP had this amazing idea of bouncing light down with a mirror, you know, to create that. You know, but I was cursing him because I knew at one point the sun was going to get so high that you couldn't bounce it. So I was like, what are you doing? The beam's going to change. Like, I've already got too much to shoot, you know, like this is going to be a nightmare. And we did it, and he's right, and totally like it makes it. Yeah, we just had to be careful, and I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad he gave me the pain of making that work. But like, I didn't quite see what was going on upstairs, and to be honest, if I did, it would have. I don't know. I think I might have pulled it because we were being as safe as we could, but it was still a bunch of people holding a mirror over a big hole, you know. And this is what I love about filmmaking, right? I think it was my exec producer Gary on the day that was like, I think it's when I was doing the tanks or something, and he was like, you know, this is what it's like doing a proper movie. I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, look, when it all boils down to it, you know, like you might have $100 million, but as a filmmaker, you still have an actor, you're still in a location, you've still got the things you need to do the scene, like, you know, you've got all this stuff. So it's like, it almost proves the fact you can do a big movie, you know, as a crew or a small movie in this way. But it still comes down to like gaffer tape and, you know, holding something and rigging something to make something work.
You know, imagination.
You know, even all the budget in the world, you'd still have some guys, you know, roping up a mirror to get that shot. You know, money doesn't get you out of that hole. haha.
Just while we went away to shoot that, I was working full time on a big Netflix studio production in a big studio in Reading somewhere, and I sort of said, look, I need to go away for about. In the end, it was about 2 weeks, and so getting to Morocco and meeting up with all the rest of the crew and stuff, and from my experience, the whole experience of making that film. And from working on things like the Born series and The King, which we shot out in Hungary with David Michaud directing, and an amazing cast. Even on Jingle Jangle, which was on before I went out to this, which had an amazing cast as well and great directors. Going on to this film, there was like a real sort of team cohesion on that you don't really see on a lot of big budget films, because people go on a big budget film, there's a group of people that are really passionate about what they want to get done, and then there's a group of people that are there to work. I think on this one, everybody completely bought into this, and everybody had the same passion and drive to try and to make it as good as it could be. So it was like all hands on deck, doing whatever everybody could do to get there. And I think that speaks to the importance of a good crew. Everybody's got experience, and they knew their way around a film set and stuff. So, but just everybody pitching in to make that. And I mean, Phil sent the script to me, and I remember the first time I read it, it was about six, maybe about 3 months before we shot it. And I started texting him every paragraph. Like, oh my God. It was like, oh my God, it was like all the Easter eggs as I was spotting. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So from the point of reading that script completely at you, I was like, I am completely sold on this. And the very first contact I made with Phil was when I saw a YouTube video that he made about the making of the film and the build up to making it. And he'd been out doing locations and stuff. And I think I texted him saying, we will swim to Morocco work on this, because it was like, this is going to be incredible. And I definitely think it has turned out that way. It's not like we all say, it's not your standard sort of fan film. And the reception that it's had from some incredible people tells you that as well. I think it's just something different, and everybody was completely passionate about doing it.
Yeah, you guys had Mark Hamill comment on Luke Skywalker himself.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy to say. He's done a fantastic job. Yeah, and I mean, it was really, wonderful. I mean, when you're in the thick of it, you're getting on with it, and you're having to meet the day and do all the stuff like this. But when you spend 8 seconds thinking about it, you go like, wow, this crew that I pulled over from the UK to shoot this film and go to Morocco and shoot this fan film, like they're all as crazy as I am, and because they're all crazy about Star Wars, Indiana Jones, about film, about the genre, about X amount of things, but there's real passion, because no one was making millions out of making this film. We are fans, we just happen to be professionals. So when you can take a crazy bunch of professionals and take that passion and combine it into something like this, it wouldn't have been done in the time or in the budget or to the level it was, because even down to visual effects and the post, Ben and his team at Flipbook had no time at all to do some of the stuff, especially because they kept fighting me because I was still trying to shoot models practically, and there was a mutiny in the ranks because someone, you can tell this story, someone did a little test, didn't they, Ben?
It wasn't a mutiny. We were being efficient and making sure we had all bases covered in case you couldn't shoot it.
Love it.
So we set up to work without it, and it looked all right. So we did it that way.
We're referring to Star Destroyer because if you're watching YouTube, I've got this model behind me, and that was the first cast member. That's the first thing I bought. I was like obsessed with shooting everything exactly like Lucas would have done, and I just realized in terms of budget and time, it seems sort of cheaper and easier to go shoot a model, but actually to do it to the level that you need to with motion control and the right sort of materials and the passes, it's a huge deal. I just didn't have the time and I didn't have the knowledge. I'd learned a lot about trying to do it. So on a bigger budget thing, I'd love to, like, if you look at how, Chris Nolan, how he does like The Dark Knight and some of the amazing model stuff in that, I'd love to do it on that scale when you actually got a whole team. So yeah, Ben just sent me this file at some point, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, press play. And it was basically the Star Destroyer shot, like floating over the desert on one of Neil's drone shots. And I was just like, yeah, it's just, that is it. That's the film. And and a model could not have done that, and we still use the model, didn't we, Ben? We still used it for reference.
It was hugely important actually for the ones where it's coming out of the sand, because we filmed sand coming off it against blue and stuff, and we used that in the layers on the comp a lot. The technical guys were thankful of that, because trying to simulate that much sand falling was killing machines. So I was like, add some of these bits on it like we used to in the old days, and it worked. And it was because you need a lot of just texture and depth to those shots. And it was vital that we had those. I mean, the shoots of the model itself, if we had the time and calculations of each lens, the light and all that kind of stuff, it would have worked. But we were running out of time fast.
You use the actual the model to kind of dump sand onto as like a reference, or you use that footage in the comps that you put together?
We use that footage in the comps. Phil shot, I think, in his back garden. Was it, Phil?
Yeah.
Against the blue screen, and poured the sand over it, and it fell, and then you shoot it at high speed and then use that in the layers, and you track that into the shots, and then you get more extra bits, and then we'd simulated our own sand going down our model, and you just layer it up as much as possible. If you have that, it wouldn't have been as good a sell on the shots, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out in the end. It's interesting. You can be so convinced as a filmmaker, like, this is exactly how I'm going to do it, and you always have to kind of be that pig-headed about it, because nothing gets done, right? There's so many different ways of doing it. So you've got to go, no, I'm doing it that way, and we're going to run until someone, pulls a curveball, or there's, I was like, I'm going to shoot practically. I'm going to learn all I can about doing it practically. This is it, I want to try and honor that. But then you just realize, like, you're just fighting a losing battle. But actually, if I'd not done that, then we wouldn't have the model. We wouldn't have been able to shoot all the sand textures, and we wouldn't have, so it did end up, improving the shots. So I'm glad we did it. But I am looking forward to doing more model stuff, in the future. I think mainly it was, and I've worked with Flipbook, and they've done amazing work. They've done, commercials together and stuff. But, when you work on something for 3 years and it's your baby, and you're spending all this money on it, and by design, really, you've written a film that basically the end of the film, you're gonna hand over to some other people to do, right? Because I don't do visual effects myself. I don't do them. I can tell you what I need and what I'd like and how it to look and give you notes, but I'm not the people doing it. So what, I think the scary point for me was letting go, giving that such a huge sequence to someone else. You don't do that. Even the film, like, performance-wise, you're handing over. Like, you're not handing over, but you know what I mean? Like, someone else is saying those lines, but you're there directing it, crafting it, trying to get it the way that you think it should go. And they bring amazing stuff to it, and and it develops, and this thing. But to hand something over and go, there you go, Ben, don't mess it up, and such big shots, because the internet is unforgiving, right? Absolutely unforgiving. They see something that doesn't look like, Star Wars, immediately it's crap. This is rubbish. This looks rubbish. And like, when those shots are like, what, 80% CGI, you're setting yourself up to fail, like, massively. And I think it was me trying to shoot practically was a way of trying to keep some control, I think. But now I shouldn't have worried. So like, now I'm so blasé now, Ben. You've created a monster. So I'm like, yeah, Ben will do it. He can extend a Star Destroyer and make it look like the Star Destroyer bridge. Fine. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. So you create a monster.
I think the thing is that especially I wanted to do it practically as well for the same reasons that Phil did. But I also knew how long it might take and how difficult it would be to shoot it. So I was just making sure that we had something by the delivery date.
Yeah, which obviously, like, we had a hard date because we wanted to release a week before Rise of Skywalker, and just trying to pique Star Wars interest. You know, we wanted to get in there then. So I know there's a lot of fan films and probably people listening to this that are probably years in and they're in post and they're trying to get the visual effects together and stuff. And you know, and crack on, would love to see your film. But like for us, I've heard stories like that of people taking, you know, you shoot a film and then it takes years to get through visual effects because, you know, you've got an amazing visual effects company, but they're obviously they're busy, right? And everything's on the back burner, everything's on the back burner. So in chatting to Ben, it was like, look, I know I'm not paying you for the work to get all this done, but we need you to treat this like a real job, right? Or a real hard deadline. And Ben, I think at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were like, no, like this is Star Wars. Like we are, like this has to be right. We have to do it. And having a deadline just focuses you.
What does everybody think? Some of the key differences between something that's like a fan-made homage passion project and something that you work on as, you know, your actual, you know, job in each of your roles? What are the key differences that you found?
Actually, we did treat this like a normal job, to be honest. I think it's advantageous that it's Star Wars and Indiana Jones for people in our world, especially that everyone loves them. Otherwise, you're not a visual effects artist. So there's a little bit more passion there, and I've got to admit, this is the only job that I can remember I had to convince everyone would be able to get it done on time. Normally, there's a couple of people like, this is impossible. Every single member of our studio was like, it's not going to happen. I was like, yeah, it is. Just keep going. It's fine. I've got control of it. That doesn't normally happen in jobs. But we like Phil said, we did treat it like a real job because it wouldn't have got done otherwise. You do some of these things sometimes for people, and they've got no budget and they do take years because you just fit it in amongst things.
It's an opportunity for everybody involved, if they're all completely honest as well, apart from the fact that we all love these movies. It's a major opportunity, and it's got every sort of element to push and help people in their careers. You know, anything we did on this, I mean, I've been using it all over social media and trying to push it and get it seen, get people to share it and stuff, because as much as I love the film, I love being involved with it, it's also about showing everybody what we can all do as individuals as well. I think that it was a much better community of filmmakers and enthusiasts than I've ever experienced on any film that I've gone and worked on anywhere because of that. It was just like-minded people, all aiming for the same sort of level of excellence where possible.
The conditions and the sickness and that was going through shooting, I had to be really militant and say to people, you are not coming to work, do not turn up, do not do this, because everyone just wanted to be there. And there's one part you're going, these people are amazing, and they will literally go like to the ends of the earth for you to do this thing. But then you have to have the responsibility to go, no, even though you want to be like, yeah, let's go and get my shot, you're like, yeah, but like, is it worth dying for? almost worth dying for.
So
Marie, you haven't chimed in.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like slightly, I was just waiting for someone else to go first. But it's the same. It just wasn't any different. I mean, I'd actually made quite a conscious choice before kind of auditioning for this. It was just kind of, I'd thought long and hard about the roles that I'd been doing and what I was getting the most out of and what was making me kind of feel fulfilled as an actor. And I kind of had a really long think about this and gone through like all the roles I was doing, and I'd made a list of kind of the things that were that made me happy from acting and from doing a job. And this ticked all the boxes. So, I mean, I just wanted to start, my biggest focus, and it's carried on, was to do kind of good work, do it with really good people, like surround yourself with great people who I believe in what they're doing, and to only do good scripts that I'm kind of proud of. Because especially in the start of your career, there's no options necessarily to do that. And there is a lot of luck. And this kind of suddenly, you know, I wanted to only do roles, particularly as a woman, that I was like happy to kind of stand by and do, and I kind of believed in. And I kind of had this like realization, and then suddenly this script came in, and I mean, I wanted this role. I read that script and I wanted it bad. And I remember every time Phil called me up being like, oh, we're going to postpone, he's like, I can't believe you stayed with it. And I'm like, I'm so glad he didn't recast me. It was, I was so desperate to do it. So it was absolutely 100% a professional gig for me. I would have turned down other work to do it. Because I think that fan film or not fan film, the people who made this film are all professionals, and they all are passionate about it, which is a bonus. And I think is when you kind of like the magic starts happening and you start making really good stuff. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to the fact that like when someone wants it to be as good as Phil wants it to be, you know, they're going to make you look good basically. And you want to be in stuff that makes you look good, and I want to, you know, eventually want to try and be in more good stuff and less bad stuff. And yeah, you meet someone like that, and then you know about, and then you start finding out who the rest of the crew are, and suddenly you're like, well, this is important for my career. Kind of, you want to kind of ride on their coattails. Is that the expression? I don't know what I'm saying.
Not to take your job, Rachel, but can I ask Marie a question?
Oh crap! Sorry.
Oh crap!
No, I'm intrigued because just when you were saying, like, I know me, right, and my crew knew me, so they know that I'm going to strive to make this as brilliant as it could be. And yes, I did concept art, and yes, I showed you all this stuff and things like this. But like, you read that script and you go like, well, this could be bad. Like,
oh yeah.
So was there a moment when you were shooting, or like when you, like, a thing where you were like, okay, this might not be as bad as it could? Like, was there, or did you just? I know, because you're one thing is unify this whole question. Everyone just said the same thing. It's like, we're all professionals, just treat this like a professional job, and we did it. But like, you know, it still could have been bad.
Oh yeah.
Actually, totally Star Wars, because I think a lot of the cast on the original Star Wars thought it was all going to be shit.
Yeah.
It did.
They're like, what is this?
Yeah, what is this?
It was actually one of the first things I thought when I read the script. I loved the script, and it was like exactly the kind of stuff I want to do. Like, you do sometimes get those moments where you're like, this is me. I wanted it so much, and I because it just felt like it clicked. But I was reading it going, this will be epic, this will be amazing, or it will be totally shit. And it was like, I was like, does he really have the money to be able to pull this off? Is he, you know, I remember going into the audition, and these were a lot of the thoughts in my head. It was like, I definitely wanted to go in and kind of, as I knew I wanted this role, but I was like, okay, I need to like kind of suss this person out as well. And I think actually weirdly, quite early on in the audition, I guess it's a gut feeling, kind of the way that you spoke about it. I just felt like, okay, this is going to be good, or he's going to try and make it as good as he can possibly do. So kind of sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith, and you have to place your bet on someone and be like, okay, my gut says yes, and this might turn out to be a crazy decision, but like, I think that there's going to be something here. And then the day I turned, and then there was lots of information. I knew that he was like, how dedicated Phil was from the kind of like the previs and all the contact that we had like before shooting. But it was when I stepped on the set, like when I arrived on the set that day and saw everyone and everything, and the level that it was at, and how kind of you just know sometimes you walk on a set and you're like, oh, it's a good one.
It's quite interesting, Marie, how you were saying earlier how you're not fully sort of up on fandoms, but then Jamie Costa's been in a couple of like fan films, right? He's been in Kenobi, and there was Han Solo film as well, which I realised today. So it's quite a different kind of levels of depth of knowledge about the fandom. Wow, did that help in any way, or were you you didn't talk too much about that kind of stuff?
Honestly, the first conversation we ever had was, do you have any, wait, I don't even know if I can say this, diarrhea tablets? So we're mainly talking about that kind of thing, like 90% of the time. Literally, the first time I met him, that was what we discussed, and I gave him some drugs. And
they were gold.
Bonding,
they were gold.
and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was a relief for me personally, because it meant that I could kind of just rely on him to do those the little nods, the little kind of, he had a really clever performance that like felt like it was hinting at all these things, but it's also grounded in being a new person. And it kind of, I felt, took the pressure off me and meant that I had a slightly easier go of it, because I was like, right, I'm just doing Ellie as like how I like see it, and I don't need to worry about all that stuff. And he kind of, so I think that kind of hopefully balanced each other out a bit. So he was really helpful there, but we didn't talk about it much because we actually weren't together very much. We shot not that many scenes together, so it meant that he was at the hotel or I was on set. And so when we did have to shoot together, we kind of needed to have established a really intimate connection of a long-term couple really fast. So we were not talking about Star Wars. We were literally like, okay, we need to just like connect and get to know each other really, really quickly, and be comfortable with each other really fast, which he was amazing at, and I did feel really comfortable with him. But yeah, we just, to be honest, didn't have time to even discuss any of the stuff. I had no idea what he was going to do in the scenes, and he had no idea what I was going to do.
Sometimes I didn't know what he was going to do in the scene.
Yeah,
I didn't know whether he'd do it as Matthew McConaughey or whether he'd do it as Harrison Ford. Like, obviously he's an amazing impressionist of all these characters. But like, yeah, it was a lot of fun. But when he shot all of the Star Destroyer set stuff, he was like throwing up between takes. Like that sweat is real. Like that is like, I mean, it was hot in there anyway, but he was ill, like really, really ill doing that. And like, it's because we're there on set. It's the only thing we could do. I don't think Marie was there yet. So
no,
like,
so
like he just had to get on with it. And my God, he pulled in a great performance despite all those odds. Because nobody sees that, right? So as much as we talk about it now as little anecdotes and stories about doing it, like the only thing that survives is the thing that you watch. So you can't rely on the excuses of like, oh, well, I want to do this or I couldn't do that. Like it has to work as a pure experience, as a story for the audience to take in, or it's just crap, What's great about obviously Lucasfilm is that they allow filmmakers to dabble in this world. Like there's a lot of fan films, the big community, and as long as you don't make any money from it, as long as you don't, you're not disparaging towards the brand and you do something that's family and wholesome and, not horrible, then it's fine, right? It's cool. But there's always going to be the one that breaks, breaks it. Like, and I was just like, when is there a point when, especially because Disney, taking over Lucasfilm and all that stuff, it's like, is there a point when they go, no? Is there a point when they go, no fan films, no, like you've had your fun? And I hope that never comes. And and I don't want to be arrogant to think that we would be the film that breaks it. But the only thing that made me nervous was when we released the first trailer and people took to Twitter and things saying, F you, Disney, how dare you combine Star Wars and Indiana Jones? It's like the worst idea in the world, because they thought it was real. They thought it was a real thing. And like, that was a brilliant compliment for all us as filmmakers. And we were all like having the WhatsApp group and giggling. And then I was like, what if they actually shut this down because we're looking like we're selling something that it isn't, And I had palpitations, like from trailer to release. I just thought it was going to be pulled.
because it does open up this massive, you know, Star Wars is a massive universe of possibilities already, but obviously setting this within our own universe as well opens up a massive amount of more possibilities for stories. It's an open-ended kind of film, like, where's Walter, where's he gone, like, on this massive Star Destroyer. Is there any thought of making any kind of sequel or another film?
Yeah, basically he gets out the Star Destroyer, and then him and Ellie go on holiday and on this beach, and there's a pool and air conditioning, and it's all wonderful. And then they go diving, and Ellie's like, "What the hell is that?" And it's the Millennium Falcon, like in the water. And then the whole film takes place underwater.
That would be awful.
There is no plan. I say our sequel is A New Hope because, you know, hashtag spoilers, you know, the baby is a very key character in all of our lives. So, you know, that goes on to, obviously, George goes on to make A New Hope. In our idea is based on the stories his mum told him when he was a child. You know, I just love the idea of his mum, you know, telling him bedtime stories of this adventure, that what happened, and telling her, you know, and that in him as a child immersing himself in these stories and then creating that film, you know. So it did happen a long time ago, you know, far away. And I think that's the fun. I mean, and we're not the first to do it. I mean, there's an amazing film called George Lucas in Love from many years ago. That did a similar sort of idea of George Lucas in university, and he's trying to date this girl, and there's all these characters that are Star Wars, and basically it's a story of Star Wars, but from his perspective, like he's in the film. And that filmmaker actually sent me an email saying, like, "Oh, like really well done." So like it's really cool to like be inspired by something, and then it kind of come full circle in a way. So yeah, this took 3 years. Cost a heck of a lot of money. Like, no, I'm not making a film. And if I said I was, I think Ben would hang up now. Neil would be like, yeah.
I'd be like, do it.
Maria's Day. No.
Yeah.
The whole, you know, the point of this is obviously as a fan, I wanted to tell this story. But as a filmmaker, especially a British filmmaker, you know, and we don't make these kind of films in this country, you know, I wanted to make a film to show what we could do. You know, it's like the ultimate showreel piece, right? You don't have to go to ILM to get that level of special effects. You know, these guys in Manchester have done this amazing job in 4K that looks like on the big, and I've seen Origins on a huge screen on like a beautiful DCP like projection of it, and it is stunning. It's absolutely stunning. And you go, yeah, you know, they should be doing big movies. Marie should be doing big movies. Neil, you know, should be doing, like, we all want to be making these movies that we grew up with. So yes, it's about the, you know, the fact we love the films, but as filmmakers, these films got us into wanting to be filmmakers. I aspire to make those sorts of films, big, fun, tentpole, you know, movies. You know, sometimes you kind of got to show you've got the stuff, right, for you to get the shot. You know, who knows? What I say is I'm not going to make another fan film sequel, but what I hope is the next thing we make is something as a team to go, look what we did based off of this thing.
We all want the world to see this because it's difficult, you know. It's you know, I said this is going to get 10 million hits, and if it gets 10 million hits, I get the logo tattooed on my ass. But in a funny kind of way. It's a really cool logo. We've all got connections from working in the film industry, and it's amazing how such a small world it is and how far you can get things and where you can get people to look at. And I spent the rest of the whole shoot on Jingle Jangle, which was about another 3 or 4 months, basically showing it to all the producers and the directors and actors and stuff, and then explaining to them, when this is ready, I'm going to send it to you and I want you to share it. The whole thing about sort of 6 degrees of separation. Before you know it, you've got some really amazing people talking about it and looking at it, and that's how we ended up getting Mark Hamill to make that comment. You know, that was nuts. Yeah. I actually, it was 3 a.m. I text Phil and I was like, "Am I dreaming, or is Mark Hamill commented on the movie, and it was like, he has, and that was it. I was up, I didn't sleep. I just got back up, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's
so
crazy.
You know, getting people like that, and Mark Miller, you know, he's a massive influence for your comic books and comic book movies, and getting him to make the comments that he made, which then sort of pushed it to wider people that he's linked to. I don't know if you noticed this, and Phil, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I posted it on Star Wars Day. I posted a link to the movie on the Rain Dance, you know, members Facebook page, and I sort of put a couple of quotes that people had made about the movie, and I put in there, you know, it's been talked about as the greatest fan film ever made. And then one of the Rain Dance guys came back and said, "Oh, you be careful about, you know, the comments you make about, you know, it might be your opinion." I was like, "It's not my opinion." And as soon as Mark Miller put that comment on there, he's like, "You know, what was it? Check it out. You will never see a better fan film ever." I was like, "Yeah."
It's really exciting to talk to all of you guys, particularly about this one. I mean, when we spoke, Neil, when we met at Rain Dance, I think I'd literally just watched Origins like a few days before that. And that was kind of the inspiration behind, oh, I've got to talk to these people who made this like unbelievable like looking film. Like, it's just incredible, like the effects, acting, the way it's shot, everything. How have they managed to do that? Because I think people, kind of alluding to what you were saying, Phil, about people in the UK not really understanding or thinking that they have access to create films like that. You know, we're gritty British dramas and things like that we're known for, but films like this kind of definitely, like for me personally, I'm sure lots of other kind of people just starting out film careers, is going to be massively inspiring to them to go, this is accessible for me, this is possible, I can do this.
I hope so, because, you know, you're told no a lot, like in this industry, you know, trying to get in, then when you're in it, trying to do the things you want to do, everything's no. The States is the opposite of that, but, you know, but 90% of the time it's not real. So it's like, yes. But then you only need that one yes, I guess. But I think it's like, for me, this was, I had to make this film. You know, I'm a commercial director, right? I've made 5 feature films. Like, I've made films doing all right, but they're not the films I really aspire to make. You know, like Marie was saying before, like the characters you want to do, you want to put yourself out there to show that you can do these things, and to almost prove to yourself in a way, but also to other people.
Yeah. Were you making the film with the kind of YouTube in mind?
You know, we've almost made the opposite to what you should do for a YouTube film. You know, all the good stuff is at the end. It's 20 minutes long. You know, it's cinematic and really should be on a big screen, but it's on your phone. And there isn't a big, huge lightsaber fight in it, and Darth Maul isn't in it. Like, if you can tick boxes, you know, and make a film like that, and you get 5 million views in overnight, you know, because people want things fast, quick. They recognize them, you know. Oh, that's Darth Maul. Oh, he does backflips. Sweet. I know I sound like I'm attacking Star Wars Apprentice. I'm not. It's the only thing that pops in my head, because, you know, some of the stunts and stuff in that are great. It's, you know, we want to do something different, and I think that's why it takes longer to get traction, you know, with an audience, because people watch it and feel it and share it. You're not in a different pace, I think, in a different way. What I'm sort of saying to filmmakers out there is, like, don't be discouraged if you make a fan film and you put it on there and it only gets 1,000 views in the first week, you know, because it's not about view count. Doesn't mean quality. Films that can take you on an emotional roller coaster in a very short space of time are very hard to do well, and that's why I always think a short film needs to have a beginning, middle, end. It can't just be a punchline. It can't just be a gag. You see so many films that, or a cliffhanger to a sequel that never comes, or a scene from a feature film. You're like, don't make those films. You're like, if you make a film that's self-contained. That's the art of the short film. Like, regardless of fan film, that's the art of a short film. You know, for me, when I see a film that does that and does it well, I think, yes, those are the short films that stay with me.
You mentioned there a second ago about the effect it has on other filmmakers and not being discouraged as well. Right now, for certainly, I know in my full-time role is at Netflix, and I understand the slate of content that they need to make over the next 10 years and onwards. And it's just huge amounts of films they need, and they're always looking out for this kind of content, looking for interesting stories and interesting people. And so filmmakers that are watching things like this on YouTube should be looking at it and thinking, taking the inspiration from it, because if anything, it shows you that it can be done. And if you're a writer, director, filmmakers at all right now, it's almost like the best time to be doing it, because it's not just, you know, obviously Amazon and Apple and Netflix and all the other streamers need this content. There's a massive need for good films, good content, and the people to make it.
Yeah. And like you've done, you've kind of harnessed your own career destiny by showing, you know, having a showcase of, you know, what you can all make as filmmakers together as a team. And then that surely, you know, leads on to other opportunities for you in your careers as well.
Everyone's like brought their best to it because they wanted it to be the best, so they could show what they can do. You know, it's like, where is the scale of ambition here? I grew up on Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, you know, all these films, and those are the films I want to make. And hopefully Origins is a film that, you know, the powers that be might see and go, yeah, all right, you can come and make tea on Mandalorian Series 12, Episode 3. So yeah, I'm excited to see what we all do next, you know, hopefully together, but also, you know, it'd be interesting to do a 5-year reunion and, like, you know, where are they now?
Well, yeah, thank you everybody for your time. I'm going to wrap up with a final question for everybody, and that's, yeah, what are you working on now and next? What's next for everybody?
At the moment, building a swing for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, what is the lockdown question versus?
No, we're actually, I think, as an animation and VFX company, we're very thankful that actually people still need content, and so animation can be done, and we're all split apart around the country doing it. The Mandalorian, that'd be a nice one.
Yeah.
Get a chance to do a dark saber. That'd be it.
Yeah, it's a funny question in lockdown. Every job I was meant to be doing has been postponed. And so it's hard to know. You're like, well, it might happen. It might not happen. But someone has written something for me which may or may not happen. But I think, again, it's one of these interesting things where you don't know whether that would have happened had I not done Star Wars Origins, because, again, it's a lead role, and she's kind of maybe not a natural action hero, but ends up having to kind of, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, like having how people see you. It really helps how people see you having done something like this. But yeah, to be honest, absolutely nothing, hoping that some projects come back to life.
Yeah.
This is a really torturous question to ask people that work in the film industry. The film industry is shut down.
My husband says that my superpower is optimism. So I'm like, yeah, what's everyone getting up to now? And I just completely forget about this, you know, global pandemic.
Yeah.
It's a funny old thing, because obviously, yeah, the film industry's shut down, but I think almost everybody in it is probably thinking about or doing something about the thing they want to do next. I mean, I've kind of been working from home a lot and still trying to do what I can do in my sort of professional full-time role. But in this lockdown, I finished a script that I'd been trying to write for ages, started another script that I've been thinking about for ages. I made a couple of little short, funny little videos with my kids and stuff, and it's tough, but there's opportunity in there. So, you know, definitely that, you know, now that we, you know, the whole rain dance thing, it's learning. It's unfortunate we couldn't do that in the classroom and learn from those amazing people there, but we're still doing it online, and it's all about just absorbing what you can out of this time that we've got, and hopefully come out of it the other end with some great ideas and just pushing on and making the best of it, really. And I think the ones that do that will push on. You know, they're much more likely to succeed. So it'd be easy just to sit back and relax or get a bit, you know, depressed about it all. And no doubt it's tough, but it is an opportunity.
It's funny, guys. Like if you look at my Instagram, I'm just now baking bread. That's all I'm doing, because I do commercials and I'm busy, and you know, like to actually have the headspace to just sit down and dabble with it, bake some bread, play with my kids, bake some bread, write. You know, in 2 months or whatever, I've written this crazy long screenplay. So that's fun. That's fun to do and fun to have. It's nice to have something like that to be able to send out, you know. And there's another film that I'm involved with. It's like a sci-fi time travel thriller, which seems to be getting some traction. So I think what's interesting is, albeit there are certain things that opportunities that might have come along or were about to happen, and then lockdown, it all changed. I think like, in terms of Hollywood, and the way people are like either unclear about what they want to make next in terms of their slate. Everyone definitely knows that like no one wants to make anything down and depressing, and like everyone's like, we really need some escapism now. And I'm like, hello, those are the films I want to make. So if you're writing that COVID epic, just stop writing it. It's a waste of time.
One of the biggest, most amazing lessons I learned over the past 10 years is that you kind of make your own luck. It's always said, and everybody sort of spouts it out, and you know, people say it a lot. But actually, I think the harder you work, the more luck you seem to have. And I think for something like Phil writing stuff and putting all that effort in, having put all the effort into making Origins as good as it is, inevitably it's people that do that sort of stuff that find success. And I think what happens is the universe changes, and all of a sudden, and a lot of scripts happen that way, all of a sudden it becomes really relevant and really sought after, and it's what the world needs. And I think that's a great point that you've made there, Phil, that things that might not have been what people wanted 6 months ago, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is exactly what we need. So I can't wait to see what comes next.
That's such a lovely point to finish on. Amazing, guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with Origins and filmmaking and fandom in general. It's been super interesting for me. I've got like a billion other questions I could ask, so maybe down the line when we have that reunion, I'll ask them then.
Hopefully, like in person over a beverage in some sort of establishment.
I've forgotten what they're like now. It's so long.
And Rachel, we obviously, now that we're doing the rain dance stuff, we're going to collaborate on something, and it will win the Cannes Film Festival, something like that, won't it? So,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, nice to see you guys.
Miss you all.
This is the Fan Made Film Podcast.